ఒక్కొక్క దినం లోపల ఒక సముద్రానికి కొన్ని కోట్ల టన్నుల చేపలు పట్టేస్తున్నారు.
And in fact, every day crores and crores of fish are caught every day.
సముద్రం కూడా బ్యాలెన్స్ తప్పవుతుండాలి.
So
చేస్తున్నారు.
In fact, every day crores and crores of fish are caught every day.
సముద్రం కూడా బ్యాలెన్స్ తప్పవుతుండాలి.
So ocean is losing its balance.
ఆ తప్పేటప్పటికే పైన ఉన్నటువంటి మానవులు భ్రమించిపోతున్నారు.
And this leads to all calamity.
భారతదేశం అంతే కాకు అన్ని దేశాల వాళ్ళు కూడా ఒక బ్యాలెన్స్ ని పట్టుకోవాలి.
Not only
I don't know what's going on.
Not only Bharat, people of all countries should maintain balance.
పంచభూతములంతా భగవత్ స్వరూపమే.
5 elements are divine.
భూమి భగవంత స్వరూపమే.
Earth is divine.
మానవునికి ఎంతనో అంత తృప్తి పట్టడం లేదు.
Man has no contentment.
మితిమీరినటువంటి ఆశ ప్రయత్నిస్తున్నారు.
He is entertaining too many desires.
కనుకనే ఏదో ఒక పెట్రోల్ కావాలి, ఒక ఆయిల్ కావాలి, భూమిని తవ్వాలి.
All in the name to acquire the oil and petrol. He has been
బ్యాలెన్స్ ఉండాలి కదా.
The earth requires
భగవంతుని సృష్టిలో సర్వం కూడా ఒక విధమైన బ్యాలెన్స్ గా పెట్టాడు.
In God's creation, everything maintains perfect balance.
బ్యాలెన్స్
Perfect balance.
సముద్రంలో కూడా బ్యాలెన్స్ ఉండాలి.
Balance there in the ocean.
ఒక్కొక్క దినం లోపల ఒక సముద్రానికి కొన్ని కోట్ల టన్నుల చేపలు పట్టేస్తున్నారు.
And in fact, every day crores and crores of fish are caught every day.
సముద్రం కూడా బ్యాలెన్స్ తప్పవుతుండాలి.
So ocean is losing its balance.
ఆ తప్పేటప్పటికే పైన ఉన్నటువంటి మానవులు భ్రమించిపోతున్నారు.
And this leads to all calamity.
భారతదేశం అంతే కాకు అన్ని దేశాల వాళ్ళు కూడా ఒక బ్యాలెన్స్ ని పట్టుకోవాలి.
Not only Bharat, people of all countries should maintain balance.
పంచభూతములంతా భగవత్ స్వరూపమే.
5 elements are divine.
భూమి భగవంత స్వరూపమే.
Earth is divine.
Okay. 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 Let me see if I can figure this out. I wish I could.
మానవుడు ప్రకృతి నుండి ఆవిర్భవించినటువంటి జీవి.
Man is a product of nature.
భూమి ప్రాణం అందిస్తుంది.
It's earth that gives us life.
సూర్యుడు తేజస్సును చేకూరుస్తాడు.
Sun gives radiance.
వృక్షములు ఆక్సిజన్ అందించి చెడ్డను దూరం చేస్తుంది.
Trees supply oxygen and removes all that is bad.
జలము దాహము తీర్చి ప్రాణమును పోషిస్తుంది.
Water quenches our thirst and sustains our life.
గాలి మానవునికి ఊపిరితిత్తులను అందించి వాడికి ప్రాణములకు సహాయం కావస్తుంది.
The wind supplies air to our lungs and maintains our life.
ఇట్టి పంచభూతములు యందు ఆవిర్భవించినటువంటి మానవుడు ఈ పంచభూతములు యందే జన్మించి ఈ పంచభూతములు యందే జీవించి ఈ పంచభూతములనే ఆధారముగా చేసుకొని బ్రతుకుతున్నటువంటి ఈ మానవునికి ఈ పంచభూతముల యొక్క గుణములు తనకెందుకు లభ్యం కావటం లేదు?
Having been born in this combination of 5 elements, having been born as human life, leading the life of a human being, basing on the 5 elements, how is it that he doesn't acquire the nature of the five elements.
ప్రకృతి నుండి ఉద్భవించినటువంటి మానవుడు ప్రకృతి గుణములను ప్రబోధించాలి, ప్రచారించాలి.
Being the product of nature, he should practice, propagate the nature and its quality.
ప్రకృతి ఒడిలో జీవించినటువంటి మానవుడు ప్రకృతి యొక్క తత్వాన్ని అనుసరించాలి.
Having been the product, having been born in this nature, one should follow nature.
పక్షులైనా, మృగములైనా, వృక్షములైనా తమ తమ సంకల్పములను గురించి తమ తమ ఆదర్శములను తాము అందిస్తూ ఉన్నాయి.
Birds, animals and trees follow their innate nature, follow their own quality and set an ideal.
వృక్షములు పవిత్రమైనటువంటి అందించి విష ప్రాణములు తాను స్వీకరిస్తూ ఉన్నాయి.
Trees supply oxygen to all of us and receive carbon dioxide, which is a poison.
పశువులు కూడాను తమ కర్తవ్యాలను తాము నిర్వర్తించి జగత్తులకు ఎంతయో ఉపకారం చేస్తున్నాయి.
Animals also adhere to their true nature and are ideals.
కానీ మానవుడుగా జన్మించి మానవుడని అనిపించుకొని ఈ మానవతా గుణములను తాను ఎందుకు ప్రబోధించటం లేదు?
Having been born a human being, called so, how is it that he doesn't practice human values?
కారణము తన యందు ఈ మానవతా గుణములు కోల్పోవటం చేతనే ఆ మానవతా గుణములు తాను ప్రచారం చేయటానికి తగినటువంటి యొక్క స్థితిలో లేడు.
He is not able to propagate, publicize human values because he stopped practicing them.
కానీ అనేక మంది తన సుఖ సంతోషములంతా కూడాను నూతన సంవత్సరం ద్వారా మనకు కలుగుతున్నవి అని భావిస్తున్నారు.
Many feel that the new year will bring to us all the pleasure and happiness.
కనుక మన ఆనంద సుఖములు రెండు కూడాను నూతన సంవత్సరం పొందవటం లేదు.
It is not the new year that brings you the bliss and happiness.
పూర్వము చేసినటువంటి యొక్క కర్మల యొక్క ఫలితములే మనకు అందిస్తూ ఉన్నాయి.
Action done earlier will come back to us by way of result.
కనుకనే వాటిని పరిహారం గావించుకునే నిమిత్తమై నూతన సంవత్సరం నందు ఉత్తేజమైనటువంటి గుణములను మనం ఉప్పొంగింపు చేసుకోవాలి.
In order to solve, to get over the consequence and the result, we have to involve ourselves in sacred actions.
Sai Ram, everyone. We'll get started in just 1 minute.
Sairam.
Om. 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 Sai Ram, everyone, and welcome to Planting Trees, Seeing Sai in All, our EnviroCare Wing and the Om Sai Trees Task Force event today. It's my most humble pranams to the lotus feet of Swami. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to the event. I think you will learn quite a bit from all of our amazing speakers. But before we jump into that, to set our minds and our intentions for this event, we're going to kick it off with a visualization. So please settle in and welcome the YA EnviroCare co-lead, Sai Prabhu, who will lead us through this visualization.
Sairam, everyone. Please close your eyes for this visualization and breathe deeply a couple of times. Imagine you are sitting in your center. You have invited Swami for an event, and Swami just arrived to bless the occasion. Now, feel the love and joy in you as Swami walks around the devotees. Swami got seated in the beautiful chair you decorated for him. Swami is enjoying all the children's program, YA program, adult program, and the bhajans. And he looks so happy and blesses everyone. Swami walks to the podium and he says he is very happy to see everyone working with unity. Since Swami notices everything, he appreciates everyone for bringing reusable water bottles, carpooling to get to the center, using reusable cutleries, and not wasting food. Swami looks at you so lovingly and says he is very happy because you are so kind to Mother Earth. Chala santosham, chala santosham. He continues, there is a lot to do, Bangaru. So go within, see God in nature, and protect Mother Earth. Sai Ram, please open your eyes slowly when ready.
Yeah. Wasn't that beautiful? Hopefully you had some relaxing time. Now I want to introduce the event, which was organized, as I said, by the Om Sai Trees Task Force, which is part of the USA SSSIO, or Sri Satya Sai International Organization USA EnviroCare Wing. And around Swami's birthday last year, we launched the task force with the aim of giving guidance to all of the centers on how we were on how to launch their own tree planting events. We did this alongside of the task force with the Satya Sai International Organization, Sai 100 team. We are creating a web presence, a tracking system, and we're identifying center points of contact so that we can start planting in this summer, the summer of 2023. That's our goal. And it's a very ambitious goal. But before we can take on such an ambitious goal, it's very important to understand why we're doing this. It's not just for the sake of planting trees. It is much, much more. And we need to understand the spiritual underpinnings. And that's why we're here. And for that sake, I am extremely glad to welcome two incredibly renowned speakers who have put together the following presentation: Planting Trees, Seeing Sai in All. Brother Ashok Chakrani is the chair of the committee for the environmental sustainability effort by the international organization. He is also from Hong Kong, Zone 5, and is a chair there and serves on several committees. We also have Sister Tina Schweikert, who is from the USA and is a longtime devotee from the Northwest, very ardent environmentalist herself, both at a personal level and throughout her career in the Sai organization, has met Swami many times and written a book called Tread Softly with Swami's messages on the environment. So I'd like to invite them to the screen. And to join now and go ahead and begin the presentation as I try to tee up the slides and see their faces at the same time. Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, everyone. Let me start by making a few very preliminary comments, and I have another screen right beside me, so if you see me turning away, that's what I'm doing. I'd like to make a series of preliminary points before we go into the presentation. The first is that a couple of years ago, the Environmental Sustainability Committee talked to all the EnviroCare coordinators from all the zones. And we very quickly realized that in terms of the physical work, the environmental work, all the zones were doing a great job, and they really needed very, very little support from us. But what we did come to understand is that there was a lot of emphasis on the work itself, and perhaps with greater understanding of the spiritual science and nature, that work could be infused with much greater devotion and much greater awareness of the presence of God in all creation. And in that regard, that work could become part of their daily sadhana. And so we decided the best way we could assist, especially because we're a spiritual organization, is to emphasize the spiritual sciences involved in nature and in tree planting. The presentation you see has many, many slides, and the first 15 and 16 are really just a collection of quotations. And what we've done is to actually take those quotations off Tina's book, which you heard about a short while ago. And these slides will be available to anyone. And what we've done is to keep in parentheses at the end of each quote the page number, so you know exactly where to go to if you want to look for that particular quote. Of course, there's the environmental book, Nature, the Vesture of God, which was published during the Go Green Conference, which is on our website on sittasai.org. And that will supplement these quotes and be a great study circle guide. Because of the shortness of time, it's simply not possible to go through all the quotes today. But what I hope to do is to highlight some of the quotes, and in that process, give you a short narrative. But I hope you use the slides in your centers, in your study circles. I just want to share one sort of experience I had, which very much helped me come to the sort of position I am in relation to these quotes. For many, many years after Swami left his physical form, I used to, in my daily prayers, prayed to him to come to me in his physical form so that I could kiss his feet and take his darshan. And that went on for quite a while. And then I came to realize one thing: maybe that is not what he wants. Maybe he wants me to train myself to take his darshan in all creation, so that everywhere I look around me, whether it be in the trees, whether it's in the water, that I see him there. And that realization sort of spurred me on in focusing on this aspect of his teachings. So that is something I hope to share with you, the idea that takes darshan of Swami in his creation. And he, in fact, he talks about nature being a manifestation of God's will and the means by which man can reach God again. So that is the background. What I like to do is not go through every slide. I like to go through some of the slides, and Sister has been kind enough to help me with the slides. So could I go to the next slide, which is slide 2 in my presentation, which may be your slide 8. Yep, is that one. The first thing I want to emphasize, and I think everybody really, really understands this, is the quote by Lord Krishna. I am the seed in all beings. And you know, it's so very easy to just read that, but I think we really must stop and think about the enormous significance of those words. Because if he is a seed in all beings, and if he permeates all creation, that tells you that Swami is in the 5 elements. He is in the trees. He is in the water. And once one comes to that realization, I think it really changes one's whole relationship with nature. The second quote I wanted to go to is on the next slide. And it's the slide after this one, slide 9. And it reads, man has the rare good fortune of adoring nature as the body of God and offering grateful worship to God. Now, again, I think one has to stop and pay really careful thought and reflection to these words. We have this unique gift and ability to worship Swami in nature. That is the body of God as he describes it. And through that, offer grateful worship to him. So one of the things I take away from this is nature is the field of our adoration and worship of the unmanifest God. We may be very comfortable, because we've been taught to from a very, very young age, in worshiping God in the idols, in a temple. But really, if God permeates all creation, and if nature is the body of God, then perhaps a more effective way of worshiping God and revering God is to revere and worship him in the trees, in the grass, in all creation. And it's that background which I would like to emphasize this morning. This idea that in the environmental work that we do, we should not in any way divorce God from our environmental work, from the environment in which we serve. The third slide I'd like to go to is slide 5, which is my slide 5, which is 2 slides down. I think slide 11. It's the top quote you see on your screen. Make use of the things in the world with the awareness that it is all God's creation, and you should be grateful to the divine for everything. Have everything within limits, including your desire for comforts. Now, again, my take on this is that this quote emphasizes the importance of having spiritual wisdom. A moment ago, we were talking about adoration and devotion. This I read as emphasizing the importance of having spiritual wisdom, understanding and upholding our responsibility to act dharmically via nature, and in so doing, earning Lord's grace. In this video that you will see in a little while, Swami speaks of balance. But when we speak of balance, we don't mean our hearts and minds having one foot in the world and one foot in the temple. We speak about living in accordance with the teachings in the scriptures and in accordance with human values and in accordance with everything Swami has taught us about nature and our relationship with nature. So, we have environmental work as sadhana. We have environmental work as devotion. We have environmental work requiring spiritual wisdom. If I can move 2 slides down, there is a quote at the very top there, page 118 in Tina's book. It is your duty to revere God in each of them, referring to each part of his creation. And again, this is the sort of thing you can hear about and it may not sit in your heart. But let me share my personal reflection about that quote. If we believe that God is the cause and nature is the effect, if we believe that creation is a manifestation of the will of God, if we believe that God permeates his creation, then I ask rhetorically, can we really love God if at the same time we abuse his creation? And I think very easily one comes to see that that is not being earnest, that is not being authentic. And so if we are to live true to our love for Swami, then we have to love the creation, which is the nature, which is the body of God. And again, here I emphasize, do not divorce the Prakriti with Purusha. Do not divorce God from his creation. They are one. And that is the awareness with which we have to live in the world. The next quote I like to go to is, again, 2 pages down, which should be page 15. And it's the last quote. Modernity is not exploitation. Modernity is limitation. Modernity is making use of natural resources in a limited way without disfiguring them and without killing them altogether. Now, when I saw this quote, it was really, really interesting because of the word modernity and how Swami talks about what is modernity. And in that sense, it struck me because it is so counterintuitive to all the education I've received, whether in school or outside of school in my career, because we tend to associate modernity with the advances of science and technology in the material world, and with the physical and mental well-being of individuals and communities of people in the material world. That's how we define modernity. That's how we define success. But we need not look very far to come to the realization that that so-called modernity has left the world crippling. It's not just environment in the environment. It is the inequality and injustice in the way we use our resources. It is in the poverty of people. And it is in that 1% that dominates the wealth of the world. I mean, that is, one might argue, some of the consequences of our definition of modernity, which restricts it to the material world. So what I sort of read when I read this use of the word modernity was that modernity means that we have to live with greater self-awareness of ourselves as part of the supreme whole. And the consequence of that is of living in harmony with all others and with all creation, and not abusing anything around us, including the planet. So I would urge upon you to rethink ideas that we've been taught from a very young age. And one of those ideas is modernity. In Buddhism and in Hinduism, the cause of all our suffering is said to be our desires. And so in this quotation, when Swami talks about limitation, what I take away from that is limitation of our desires, what Swami called sealing on desires, with a view to removing our suffering, with a view to removing all the evil tendencies within us, seeking purity from self-sacrifice, self-satisfaction, self-discipline, so that we earn the Lord's grace and we know how to live in love, which is what living in harmony and living in balance is really all about. If I can move 2 quotes down, there is a quote which gives us a very practical plan of action. I think it will be your quote set, your slide 17. The cause of this pollution lies nowhere else except in our actions. So the pollution that we see in the world is simply a reflection of that pollution that is within us. What must we do? We can purify the atmosphere of the world by chanting the Vedas and singing the glory of God. And I would simply add to that, reiterate what I said earlier. We need to purify ourselves because we cannot stop the pollution outside of us if we do not remove the pollution within us. And in fact, in your screen, that's the very next quote. If man acts in a righteous way, there will be no pollution at all. But man can only act in a righteous way if he is righteous. So this idea of removing pollution really is part and parcel of that sadhana, that learning, that study, that personal transformation that is required, that self-purification that is required. And I hope that is what you see environmental sustainability as. It is not just planting the tree. It is planting righteousness within us, which manifests as goodness and harmony in creation. The last quote I'd like to go to is the next slide, in fact. And it reads, the avoidance of pollution of the atmosphere or of natural resources, like rivers, is one of the ways in which an enterprise practices ahimsa. And I would say 2 things. First of all, it's one of the ways in which we as individuals practice ahimsa. And the second thing I would say is, it is one of the ways in which we practice all the 5 values of truth. And by that, I mean the awareness and understanding we've talked about, of love for all creation, reverence for all creation. So if we are to practice Swami's teachings, then I suggest what we must do is transform our love, transform ourselves, and manifest that love within us towards all our interactions with nature, and yearn to see Swami in that tree, because that will ultimately be the ultimate darshan, where anytime, anywhere, you see him around you. Om Saram, that's my presentation.
So Ram, thank you, Ashok. Wonderful laying the foundation for what we're doing here. And if we could go back to this Ashok's last slide before we start on this part, that would be great. Just the one previous, yeah. Before I get into the part of the slides that I'm going to be covering, I just thought it would be good to read this quote from Swami too. Because there is deforestation to an alarming extent, the extent of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has considerably increased. Therefore, the remedy for this situation is intensive afforestation, growing more trees everywhere and protecting the existing trees without destroying them for other purposes. So, you know, this is like the scientific reason why we're here, as well as the dharmic reason why we're here, and the idea that the tree planting is to plant trees not to be harvested for other uses, but to serve as trees in their role for protecting life on this planet. So, okay, the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to jump into how does planting trees work into our sadhana? How is our inner transformation, our spiritual transformation helped by planting trees? Next slide. So planting a tree helps us to know God. Now, some of what Ashok was talking about certainly plays into this, the idea of seeing trees as God and receiving darshan from them. So here we are planting a tree, just a young one. And by doing that, though, we serve as the Creator serves. We serve as God serves, okay? We help sustain the conditions that promote and protect life on Earth, while also helping to make the Earth beautiful and majestic. So, of course, God designed creation, and we're a part of it here, to promote life, right? To sustain life. Well, all life depends on trees for air. Of course, we know oxygen, taking in the carbon, making it a sink, cleaning out toxins. Water, the roots bring the water up from deep, bring it up to a higher water table, which benefits all of the other plants around and people. And then, of course, forests actually help to maintain the moisture and the water cycle. Without forests, the moisture would not necessarily come over. We see desertification happen when forests are gone or when they're shrinking. So the forest, if you've seen pictures of or videos of the Amazon, slow videos where you see the clouds moving over the treetops, and it looks like a river. Well, the forests, the trees actually draw that moisture, so they help create rain. And then, of course, fire, essential for us, essential for many things, even the health of some ecosystems. And without trees, how would we have fires? And of course, they receive it from the sun and store it for all the rest. And then soil. We know that trees drop their leaves, and that those leaves break down and become part of the soil. If we garden, it's wonderful to collect those leaves, especially leaves of trees that fix nitrogen, and put them onto our garden to help the soil. And then, of course, when a tree falls and breaks down, it's creating more. So all of those things, as well as food and shelter that we all rely on, and a vast diversity of species also rely on. And at the same time, the forests serve as a protective cloak over the land and helping to hold soil in place and providing shade and all these wonderful things. So as we all know, trees are amazing. Next point. So they're always giving. Oh, that's what we talked about. They're always giving. And what do they take? They're not taking. They're just there doing what God intended them to do, serving as their role for life, always purifying, and even always loving. Because what would love be without the idea of sacrificing and giving? That is how love expresses itself. So trees are expressing that love. And in this way, they serve as role models for selflessness and sacrifice. Okay, thank you. Next point. Okay. So planting a seed and tending it well. Now, I know we're not planting seeds as part of this project. At least I don't think so. Maybe some are. It could be. I shouldn't say that. But I'm assuming most of the tree plantings will be with seedlings or small young trees. But someone had to plant that seed. So we're part of that continuum for these trees. So planting the seed, tending it well, and then lovingly placing the young tree in the soft earth, we're helping bringing it to life. If it were to propagate on its own, hundreds of seeds would go down. A few of those would make it into the soil without being eaten. And then those that would actually break through the seed and start sprouting and growing that don't get eaten by deer or whatever, it's very few. So in this way, we are helping to propagate in a much bigger way. So again, in a sense, serving as God does. And then once these plants are, free to grow and doing well, they could propagate themselves and go on for eternity. So it's a wonderful act. Okay, next bullet. So planting trees allows us to express the love in our hearts, Baba's love, which can then merge with God's love in the tree. If we keep our hearts open during this process, that helps that to happen, as we'll see. So Swami told us, trees teach the lesson of sacrifice and that they not only bear fruits while they are alive, but also give away their body. Can we go back so I can finish reading all this quote? Okay. But also give away their body to be used as firewood once the life goes out of them. And of course, he says, amongst teachers, a tree is the greatest. Okay, thanks. Next one. So trees are divine beings, as are we, as we talked about. So Swami also said, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, I am in the tree that you see. I am in the ocean. I am in the earth. See me in everything. So when we are in a forest or just encountering a tree or we're at the ocean or whatever, it's important that we change our thinking that might have been that we see these as objects. The tree is not an object. The tree is another being that we can approach as a thou. It's not an it, it's a thou. Same with the ocean, same with the earth. So that then helps us to see that we are one with those and that our divine self is looking at that divine self. So verily, God resides in the tree, is the tree, just as God is fire. Okay, next point. So could we even have a sacred fire if not for the wood trees freely give? And so then how can we express our gratitude to trees as we do by making offerings to sacred fires, right? We're showing our gratitude, we're showing our respect, we're giving, we're appealing to the spirit that resides within all. So how can we do that by making offerings to such a fire? We would be like God, offering God to God. So what can we offer? Next point. We can show our gratitude by offering our pure hearts, behaving as trees do in protecting life, asking for nothing, giving all that we can. We can come to know our own God self by serving as God serves. In planting trees, we demonstrate that we are as God. We too long for life to thrive. And so what is the ultimate purpose of life? Why do we want it to thrive? It's so that we can evolve to the point where we recognize who we really are. And this is no small task. But planting trees is another way to help us understand that and see that not only us, but all is divine. Okay, next slide. Trees are models for human life. So as scientists have recently discovered through many different ways of researching that the roots of trees are joined in this interconnected web of the roots and the mycorrhizae fungi there that help to provide water and nutrients and send distress signals to all the trees around and helping to nurture and protect one another. And it's not only trees in the same family or trees in the same species. The trees that are growing together in a grove or a forest, they're sharing with one another regardless of that. And so we have this multi-generational rich diversity of trees that's really showing us, demonstrating oneness. Okay, the next bullet. So in this sense, trees also model unity with their interdependence, and they remind us that we too are interdependent. We too rely on many other people to provide everything that we need to live and survive. And we don't see this. It's almost like happening underground. We don't always see that, but it's there. And so trees help to teach us the importance of living in unity and harmony and allowing for that interdependence to function as well as it can. And I think that kind of gets into also what Ashok was talking about in modernity, that we've lost sight of a lot of this. And we've also then left some people behind. You know, we've been concentrating a lot of it in one area, and trees teach us this doesn't work. We need to share. So another thing that the forest and trees provide that's helpful for our sadhana is their stillness and silence. And in the sense, if we enter the forest or sit with the tree and enter that stillness and silence, we can feel the presence of God. I've known from my own experience, this has happened some ways quite dramatically, where the trees will actually reach out in this energetic embrace and help to show you who they are and help you to know who you are. So the other things that trees do that help teach us is manifesting their steadiness and equanimity, ready for whatever comes their way. As we know, they stand there and take the winds, the storms, the heat, everything. They just do it. And then even the axe, willingly. So by contemplating on trees, we can learn much for our own sadhana, as we've just talked about. And Baba tells us, pure, unselfish love towards all living beings, considered as embodiments of the divine, with no expectation of reward, is true love. Okay, next. Oh, Q&A? Is that the end? I think there was another one. There's another slide.
That was the last slide I had, Tina.
Oh, okay. We had actions for eternity. But that's okay. Let me just make this point before we close real quick. It's just the idea that, we're not just planting one, whatever, how many trees that we plant together with a group. We're planting whole forests around the world. And that's big. That's really big. And we should understand the importance of this act and the unity that we're showing, and that we're planning this all around the world at the same time during the same years. So I'm hoping we plant many, many trees and sow the seeds of love far and wide and into all of our hearts. Thank you. Sairam.
Thank you so much, Brother Ashok, Sister Tina. That was an amazing presentation, and you've given us so much food for thought. So I am going to, first, I recall that I did not introduce myself. I am Chitra Kumar, the USA National EnviroCare Coordinator, and I'm very pleased to be here with you and host the Q&A part of this session. So we've asked everyone to take a minute and think of any questions and put them in the chat. And as you put them in the chat, we will raise them vocally for Tina and Ashok to consider and respond to. And the first question is one that I anticipated. This is the million tree goal for the USA for 2023. It's, I guess, more generally, what 1 million trees is what we have set, this ambitious goal for the US. So I'm wondering if you can comment on, one, what is the goal for the international organization? And, what is the meaning of goals here? Like, how do we approach the idea of goals, even as we try to think of and increase our own oneness, our view of all of nature as God?
Tina, do you want to go?
Okay, I don't know any particular numbers for the worldwide goal, but I do think that having it be a high number just helps us know that we want to become part of this. We want to show how many we have done. And I know just in Oregon, the tree plantings that have already happened here, you plant a lot more trees than you think you will in a few hours. It's amazing how many can be planted. So I don't think it's too ambitious. I really don't. But at the same time, having that high goal, I don't think it should be an absolute necessity. More important is, what are we getting out of it? Are we planting the trees well? And then are they being tended well? I think maybe the next speaker hopefully will talk about that. But it's not enough just to put the tree in the ground. I know from my own experience, if you don't water them, you have to take care of them for the first 5 years before they're free to grow. At least that's in my ecosystem environment. So yeah, I think it's more than numbers.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Brother?
Chitra, if I can just add to that,
Mhm.
I agree with everything Tina said. And, I've been in the organization for over 30 years. And for many, many years in the activities, we've become very goal-centered. And sometimes we focus on numbers a lot. And Tina was talking about that. But I think, I've come to a stage now where I would say, and this is, I think, in answer to your question about goals, yes, the numbers are extremely important because they can make a practical difference to the environment. But I think we must not lose sight of that process that we go through in planting all these trees. And when we pay attention to the process, and we have a very good process where we work together well, and we understand why we're doing what we're doing, that process over a period of time has a transformative effect on who we are, on what we believe, on our hearts. It is said you can't be kind unless you do kind things. So I think what I would urge all the listeners is, planting of the trees is extremely important, but make sure that not only that you reach your goal of 1 million trees, but that your process is very pure and that it transforms you. And it may well be that at the end of the day, that's as or more important than the ultimate goal of 1 million trees.
Yeah, such important points. The process is as important. We're actually cleansing our own minds as we do it.
And our hearts.
And our hearts. Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of questions about the actual process of how we do this planting. And so, yes, in a few minutes, we will have an amazing presentation from one of our very own task force members, who is a tree master, and we'll ask him to address some of these details. We have so much experience in amongst our Sai devotees. I have been quite thrilled to see that. And we also have some questions around how do we organize ourselves around some of the drivers for deforestation. So, for example, Brother Kapil has said the largest source of deforestation is suburban sprawl. To counter this, we would need to promote housing solutions other than single-family homes and limit master plan communities, etc. So how can we as devotees have an effect on that? Because the planting part, I've thought about this too. Planting is wonderful, but while we're planting, what if there are trees being cut down for one reason or another elsewhere? How do we think about this as devotees?
Well, I worked for a city government. And I worked in the planning department for some time and wrote a tree ordinance for the city. So I know that there are ways of protecting existing trees. There's ways of designing developments so that they protect some portion of the existing trees. So, if your city does not currently have one, I would encourage people to let their city councilor or commissioner, whoever they have as their representative, know that that is sorely needed. So there are ways, like, for instance, along waterways and wetlands, that's a great place to be able to maintain trees and not develop in those areas. You can also have the requirements to plant new trees if ones have been taken out, and the appropriate kinds of trees. But it would take, if that's not happening and you see it, you have to get vocal, whether it's letters to the editor, calling the city councilor, putting up a sign. I mean, it kind of requires you to get involved. And it works. I have to say, it does work.
I love, Tina, that you encourage us to get vocal. There are other ways of influencing, and doesn't have to be political, but it does have to be involved in something other than our own family, and being involved in community. And that's part of the 9-point code of conduct, to be involved, to do community work and be involved. So that's really wonderful. So we have 5 more minutes. So we have a few more questions we can cover. And one of them really is we need an efficient way to track, and not just the planting of trees, but we also need to constantly gather data from all the centers and update a central website so everyone can see the progress of the plantings over the years. So I was curious, especially because both of you serve on the International Environmental Sustainability Committee and are part of the SSSIO 100 effort. Just wondering if you can share with everyone what the plans are moving forward, if there are any plans for tracking. I know we have somebody on our in the US who's actually helping put that together. But can you say any more about that?
Yeah, so in the Environmental Sustainability Committee is taking the lead in this part of the SSSIO 100 from a organization level, not the center level, where people like you guys do great work. And one of the things we are doing is building a platform where we can collect these numbers. Sister Regina from your zone is helping in that process. So we hope in the next month or two that platform will be up and running, and then we will have input from all the countries who are participating in this SSSIO 100. So we will be having a platform up. The exact logistics are being worked on now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think we're going to need to wind down this portion of the Q&A. Please keep the questions coming. We have another Q&A that will have an opportunity to address even more questions after we hear from Brother Vasuki. He is a devotee from Region 3 from North Carolina and has the distinction of being a tree master. Brother, can you share with us what that means? And then also any more introduction, and go ahead and share your slides.
Offering my humble pranams at the Bhagwan's lotus feet. Dear Swami, thank you for providing this opportunity to talk about your creation and how we can help revere and respect the creation that you have given to us. Dear brothers and sisters, Sairam to everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever in whichever part of the world you are in. So I'm here to share a few details about what does it take for us to plant the trees. Just give me 1 minute as I pull up the screen. Yeah, I'd like to start with a very simple quote, and Brother Ashok and Sister Tina has inspired us with so many wonderful quotes. And Swami says, he declares that he's the seed of all beings, and we have to watch a tree, the roots, the trunk, the branches, the twigs, the shoots, the leaves, the flowers. They all look different in form, taste, and hardness and smell. However, they have different uses for the tree and for us. But all of this manifold variety is produced, sustained, subsumed, and served in one single seed. And just to highlight, he's in the seed, he's in the tree, and he's the fruit. Love is the seed, love is the tree, and love is the fruit. I think Brother Ashok and Sister Tina emphasized that in many of those inspirations that Swami has given to us. I'd like to start off with that. So now that we have come to a point when we understand that tree planting is very important, and we also have an organization goal. As a devotee, a couple of questions comes to our mind. Okay, what can I do? So going with our experience as tree master, by the way, a tree master is something that the trees, I was a part of the Tree Charlotte initiative. We used to plant trees around the city. And the more you get involved in that tree planting event, once you reach a certain stage of experience, they just label you as a tree master so that we could share that experience with others. And that's what the Tree Master is all about. So with that, I've been a part of a couple of events, and just to give a little bit of introduction, you could organize a tree planting event. And then the second one is you could organize a tree giveaway events. And then the last one is you could volunteer to plant a tree itself. So each one of these activities actually help in the cause that we are trying to achieve right now of planting 1 million trees. But then there's quite a lot of logistics and then planning, and then some amount of knowledge is also needed to handle this. And Swami always says, it's not the quantity, it's the quality that is important. So every little attention to detail will actually help us achieve that. Not only we need to plant the trees, but also has to thrive further. All right, so if you look at this picture, let's say if I decide that I want to organize a tree planting event, very quickly you can see that, okay, you have to source the trees. You have to decide the sizes of what kind of trees, how many trees, and then you have to decide upon where should I plant these trees, and then you also have to source a number of volunteers because it is a little labor-intensive work. So a lot goes in organizing tree planting events. So we'll just talk a little bit about the tree planting events first, and then we'll go to the tree planting itself next. So as you can imagine, if you ever decide to organize a tree planting event, and let's say you want to plant about 100 trees, naturally these trees are all, grown in, containers and buckets, and they do definitely weigh a lot. And so you need a lot of logistics from wherever you're sourcing. So if you're sourcing from a nursery, you'll probably go to the nursery, bring them in a pickup truck, and then unload the truck. So it's a little heavy, labor intensive work. So we need to organize ourselves to handle those. And then we have to actually invite all the volunteers to come through. And then before even they get started, let me tell you our experience. When a tree planting event happens, a lot of people would like to volunteer. Many times the entire family comes along with their children. It's going to be a little bit of fun event. So they will have a lot of enthusiasm, but we need to give them a little bit of training before they start. Because remember, once you plant the tree, and after that, if it doesn't sustain, if it's not planted right, many times the trees will not survive. So it's very important that we give a little bit of 5 minutes quick education for them. Generally, you can imagine that if there are about 50 volunteers, we divide them into 2 groups and then put them in a semicircle, and then you actually demonstrate one tree in front of them, how to plant it. Then they take that education and then they go out in the field, start planting wherever the spots are marked. So typically, we should be ready with all the activities, like getting the trees, putting it in the right place, and having all your tools, marking the spots, and then yes, they are well educated at that point, and on-site training for just about 5 minutes that you need to give. So once that is done in a tree planting event, the event organizers generally have the responsibility of the safety, and it has to be emphasized about the safety aspects that need to be taken care of, including the younger ones. And not to mention, it's going to be an outdoor event, so we'll have to plan for what to wear, what to bring, and also an understanding that, okay, we're going to be working in the dirt, so there's necessity that you need to wear shoes probably and wear appropriate clothes if it's too cold outside. And of course, the tools. Well, with that said, let's switch our topic towards, okay, let's plant a tree. So what do you need? Actually, we need basic tools like the shovel and a rake. And if you're planning to dig a hole for the plant manually, then you would need these basic tools. But however, if you're organizing a large group of around 100 trees, it's going to be a little labor intensive. Some of the organizing events also use a machine, something that you see on your screen. It's a little hand tool. Adults need to be there to handle this. And it kind of helps you to speed up the process. If you're planning to plant a tree for about hundreds of them, it takes quite a lot of effort to dig the holes. And few safety things, generally don't try to place the rake upside with the spikes pointing up. It's generally not advisable. It could be some safety issues, so always try to keep the rake down. And when you start thinking about planting trees, you would think like, what kind of trees should I buy or source, or how do I decide? So this probably could help you in the visualization that you see. Trees come in different sizes of the containers or the buckets that we call the 1 gallon, 2 gallon, 3 gallon, 5 gallon. Usually these are all planted long back, and then they will be sitting in the bucket for quite some time. And then they will, would have generated a lot of roots within the container. And then they would also have grown a little taller. So generally speaking, in most tree planting events that I have been so far, it's the 3 gallon and the 5 gallon is the most preferred ones. Anything more than that would need a lot more effort. So generally anything 5 gallons and below would be a preferable size so that you can easily handle them and manage to plant. And it also gives you a little bit of idea as to how high, how tall that could be when you compare a person standing next to it. When you start planting the trees, so we all have seen this picture of a plant being in the container. However, certain basic terminologies we need to know, because now that we are trying to plant 1 million trees, we need to be absolutely sure of certain terminologies, and which is helpful. So one of them is a root flare. It's the point at which actually the roots flare out from the stem, and we call it as a root collar just below that. And these plants will be sitting in the bucket, and then a lot of roots will be, will be generated and will be encircling themselves, and it would have created a big thick ball along with that mother soil that it has. And that's what we call it as a root ball on your right side. So few small tips, carefully select the spot where you want to. We're going to watch a small video for about 4 minutes, and that'll explain a little more. You have to be careful where you are actually digging the holes. And also we need to take care of, whether there are any power lines, and then there are utility lines, and so on and so forth. And there are a little more instructions about how to dig and what size it should be. So I'll probably try to walk you through in the video that we're going to watch. But the most important point is we should always make sure that when we plant the tree, the root flare is slightly above the ground. And we need to take care of one thing where when you mulch that, once you plant the tree and you mulch around, don't make a hill at the stem, and make sure that the mulch doesn't touch the stem at the root flare. Because our experience tells us that if you try to plant the tree and make it like a hill at the stem, and also mulch touching the stems, usually they don't survive after a couple of months. With all that, we are planning to plant 1 million trees. It's equally important that they survive and that they thrive further. So, so that's an important tip to know about. So what we're going to do is we'll just watch a quick video, and hopefully that will help us understand a little better.
Before you plant your tree, you're going to want to find a good place that your tree can thrive. Does your tree like full sun, or does it prefer some shade? Does it like wet or dry soil? These are things to keep in mind to find a good place for your tree to thrive. You'll also want to do the look up and look down test. When you look up, can you see any power lines or major structures that will get in the way when your tree grows? When you look down, you want to keep in mind any utility lines that might get in the way of when you're digging or when your roots start to grow. You can call 811 to get a utility marker at your home. This spot looks perfect.
Thanks, Kate. Let's talk about digging the hole now. First, you want a hole twice the size of the pot and 1 shovelful deep. If you take your shovel and set it next to the side of the pot, you'll see that it only needs to be 1 shovelful deep. The top of the root flare needs to be level with the soil and the existing landscape.
To ensure that the hole is the right depth, take your tree while it's still in its container and place it in the hole. The root flare, or base of the tree, should be level with the above ground. A helpful tip is to lay a rake or a shovel on the ground over the hole to ensure that the root flare is level with the ground. Next, you'll want to make sure that the bottom of the hole is flat so that your newly planted tree will be straight. You can accomplish this by stepping into the hole and compacting the soil with your feet. This will also prevent the new tree from sinking too deep into the ground. Once you're confident that the base of the hole is flat, you can remove the tree from its container. Check one more time that the tree stands up straight when it's in its hole. As you can see, the rake touches both the root flare and the ground, indicating that the hole is the correct depth. Since your tree has spent most of its life in a container, its roots have likely grown in circles around itself. It's super important to loosen the roots from the compacted soil so that they will start to grow outward instead of around. Now it's time to backfill the hole. As you shovel the original soil back into the hole around the tree, use your foot to pack in the soil with every few scoops of dirt. This will give the young tree more stability. We're almost done, but we can't forget to mulch. Lay the mulch in a ring around the new tree. Then spread the mulch layer so it is about 2 to 3 inches thick, but be sure that the mulch does not touch the base of the tree. You should leave anywhere from 2 to 4 inches between the mulch layer and the root flare. The next bit isn't always necessary, but if you notice that the stake that's supporting your young tree is crooked or broken, be sure to replace it so that your tree can get the proper support it needs. You'll want to place the stake in the ground and secure it to the tree with a tape or zip tie. You can remove it after about 1 year. Finally, give your tree a drink of about 5 gallons of water. You should water your tree the same amount about once per week during its first year, unless it rained in the past 3 or 4 days. Thanks for watching and enjoy your new tree.
Yeah, I hope that was helpful to get a sense, just a quick wrap up. What we just discussed is about what's a tree planting event is all about, what are the logistics, basic things that we need to know. And if you were to decide how to plant a tree, what are the precautions we need to do and what steps we need to take. In some of the tree planting events recently that have been, most of the times, Swami always says you need to do with love. And I found a very important thing that helps me, and I thought of sharing this. So generally try to do 1 or 2 gayathris just right after planting the tree, because once we step out of that place, Lord is there to take care of it. Thank you for this opportunity to share. So yeah.
Sai Ram, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I think we really got a sense of what it takes to plant a tree in case you've never done it before. And some idea of, I think, just a teaser. Because I'm sure there are many, many, many questions, and it's so special. It's very important to understand your local context. So I'm actually really excited that we have so much attention going on in the chat. I think I looked away for a minute and there were 41 chats going on. So people are very engaged with this. A lot of questions coming in for you, brother. So one of them is, a lot of questions about partnering with other organizations like Arbor Day, Audubon Society. Do you have any recommendations of good organizations to be partnering with? And what would you suggest for our center members who are enthusiastic about getting going?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think while being in Charlotte, I used to be part of the Tree Charlotte initiative. And I recently moved to Durham. And so naturally, I'm 3 hours away from where I was before. And this question definitely applied to me last couple of months back. So if you go to any of your county websites in your local region, there's always a tree planting organization that's out there. It's just a matter of where to look for. Usually when you try to reach out to the Arbor Day Foundation, they will actually kind of guide you to the local available tree planting initiatives. So when I moved here to Durham, there was a Keep Durham Beautiful, Durham Trees, Trees Raleigh. Many organizations are there. And if you ever need to find where you can, so I think I would start from the county website.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. Another related question is, okay, let's say you live in New York City, the urban jungle. There was a question about that. How do you contribute there where there's a very limited amount of space to be able to plant? I live near Washington, D.C., very urban as well. So what are your suggestions? Is there a certain way you would approach it in a very urbanized area versus one that is a little more spread where there's more area for planting?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And unfortunately, in the heavily populated urban areas, the tree planting events are a little scarce to find one. But there are various community groups who are actually doing a terrace garden. It may not be a big tree that you can plant for, but city actually helps you to get onto that initiative. But in most cases, actually, they do offer some of these. Maybe it's something to do with you might have to drive down a couple of miles to find another city right next to it.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. In the DC area, there's an organization called Casey Trees. They do plan for tree planting events, and people can go volunteer or partner with the SSSIO centers could be partnering with an organization like that they would identify the locations, they would work with the city to be able to acquire the land and know the right timing and get permission to do the planting. So there's definitely ways to do it. I think of course, the question is, if you want to be planting a large volume, it's going to be less economical to do it that way. So those are considerations we have to take into account. Because I know Casey Trees, for example, to get a tree planted, they want a much bigger one because a bigger one is going to survive better than one that's 1 foot tall or a tiny sapling.
That's right.
So some things to consider, and we will go into much, much more of that. We actually have developed a toolkit and with much input from the task force members. And I'll share the URL again for signing up for us for our list, and then we will provide the toolkit for all of you. But while we're going with other questions, I wanted to also ask this. There is a question about, is 1 foot tall sapling too small? Is that okay to go ahead and plant? And where, maybe?
Yeah. In Swami's words, not anything is fine. But there is a sense of how this will be helpful much faster and much earlier. We can see the benefits of it. Even 1 foot tall trees, yes, you can do. However, a 3 gallon and a 5 gallon is generally,
Please remind us to unmute, please, if you're not the speaker. I think someone has not muted themselves.
Yeah. So I was just saying that, a 3 foot and a 4 foot, 3 gallon and a 5 gallon tree generally has a better, chances of, surviving on a longer run as opposed to the small ones. The reason is that the small ones generally, they may not survive because of either heavy excessive rain, and also there could be, it needs a lot of protection from, gale winds or hurricane wind kind of forces and all that stuff. So typically it is always preferred that a 3 gallon or 5 gallon generally have a stability. Their stems would be a little strong enough to survive, and also with a little support like stakes on it, it thrives for them.
Awesome. Thank you. So we had another question about specific to this idea of the Akira Miyawaka, the Subendra Sharma's mini forest ecosystems. Do you have any familiarity with that? And one of our brothers or sisters here, the devotees, has raised this question and given some information about it. And Brother Vasky, do you want to try to tackle that question, or if you're familiar?
I think we may have to come back on that one.
Okay. I know somebody else in our work group, our task force, did find this. We actually investigated it a little bit, whether that was something we wanted to take on. But there's so many amazing things happening around the world, different organizations trying to regenerate our ecosystems in these ways. And so that's fantastic that we also have devotees on the call who are raising these ideas, and welcome others to investigate and see if it's appropriate for your local area. That's what I would say. And in some cases it may, and in some cases it may not. Yeah. We have a question about, I'm going to take just one more question, and then I want to start winding down and share a little bit of information for how you can get involved next. So last question from Sister Margaret. So should we consider native trees for our area? Would these trees or shrubs survive better? Could you address that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And actually, it's a very important point. Native trees are always generally, they turn out to be, they survive and thrive better in their local area. And usually any kind of tree that is imported kind of from a different region probably has more chances of not surviving. So it's very important that if you're able to find the native trees in that region, yes. And a simple technique is, the Arbor Day Foundation website actually helps you to find out the hardiness of your region based on the zip code that you are in. And let's say you plan to plant trees somewhere around your neighborhood or reforestation areas out there. Just put in that zip code and the hardiness, and also they'll provide you a kind of a walkthrough wizard. What trees works better in that area. Now, it doesn't stop you from getting any other different trees, but then once you plant the trees, and you probably not will be revisiting again if it's a remote area. However, if you really want them to survive and thrive, native plants are best.
Thank you so much, brother. This was excellent information, and we still have additional questions rolling in. We're not going to be able to answer the rest of them, but what I hear is the enthusiasm, and I'm so excited to see that, because this is really the first public webinar or all devotee webinar that we're having to introduce you all to what's going on with this tree planting initiative. And so I'm going to share my screen and give you a couple more ways that you can get involved and you can start organizing in your own local area. So number one, we need your help. We love this enthusiasm. If you want regular updates, if you want to get involved in some way, please, please, please sign up at SSSIO-USA/tree-planting. There's a form on there. We'd love for you to put your information in there so we can share this presentation We can share the toolkit that our task force members have lovingly put together, which includes all of the information that Brother Vasuki shared, and includes the hardiness map, includes ideas for how to prioritize where to plant, because there are places there's a tree equity map on there where you could actually look into which areas have a paucity of trees, and you really could go as a initiative and plant in those places that don't have enough. There's a tremendous amount of other information. We'd love for you to have access to this, dig into it, and also add to it. You can tailor it for your own center. We'd love for you to do that and get going to help plant wherever it's appropriate for the seasons. So, for example, our very first planting event is already happening tomorrow. Now, not to say in the previous years, you all may have done planting, which is amazing. We know Sai devotees have been doing planting for a number of years, and would definitely want to know about that and track those as well if you've kept track. But tomorrow in the Bay Area, Brother Ravi has organized, with the help of Brother Dinakar, a tree planting event in Sycamore Grove in Livermore, California at 10 a.m. So if you're interested, we encourage you to get in touch with Brother Ravi. And next, we also have one other way that you can start planting and getting involved. We have at least one task force member in every region of the SSSIO organization, and here are their names. So we encourage you to reach out to them to get involved, because each of them is going to be forming their own regional networks and teams and providing information. For example, Sister Sai Prasanna is meeting with the Region 5 team during the regional officers retreat and sharing some information about this initiative and trying to get additional members from all of the centers engaged and involved. Every one of our regions can be doing that, and every one of our centers can be involved. And you, as a member of, whether you're a part of a group or a center, or whether you're not part of a group, but you're a passionate devotee about this, we want to see you involved, and we will support you. And our regional contacts can support you. I can support you. So with that, we are winding down our time, and we just have 2 more minutes of your precious time. We so are grateful for that you've given us your attention, and we welcome your attention, or we welcome your additional input. If I can ask any of those members, the tree coordinators, to come online, share your screen with the video, then we can not to put you on the spot. Also, Sister Tina, Brother Ashok, if you had any final comments. We can offer that.
Saram, can you hear me, Chitra?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, no, first of all, I'd like to congratulate all the organizers and everyone who has joined in, and it's a very impressive number for being part of this. We're all in it together. As a member of the Environmental Sustainability Committee, it would be great if we could take the content of today's material and share it with countries all over the world, because it's important that we remember we are one organization and we help each other. And the presentation Brother Vasuki did was unique, and it'll be a good education. So I will hopefully be drawing on some of you as we do presentations in other zones. And even if it has to be tailored to the specific needs of a specific zone, the local people can do that. But the information given has been great. So let's do this in all the zones. Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Sairam, I agree. It's been great. A lot of good information. And it's wonderful to see the number of participants here. That bodes well for the project.
Yes.
And thank you, Chitra. Wonderful job of organizing.
Thank you so much. And I have to say that there was an amazing team. The task force was extremely involved. And Brother Sai Prabhu, thank you so much for your support along with the entire YA EnviroCare team. This has been truly a team effort. And of course, thank you to our dear Bhagwan for making this a success and providing us the opportunity to be together. So with that, I will sign off with Om and Three Shantis and wish you all well. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Jai Sai Ram.
Right on.
Sairam Chitra.
Sai Ram, who's that?
Herb.
Sairam. Sairam.
Did you say Doug?
Herb.
Oh, Herb. Hi. Can we stop the recording?
Yeah.